teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of Retail Resilient. We teach car dealers all over the country how to sell more cars and make more money using social media platforms. Like I said, who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Check us out at retailresilient.com or send us a message in the chat bar on the Auto Hub Show.
Hi, it's Barry here with White Glove Performance Group. Thanks for joining the show this morning. Always great content on here, and a big shout out to Ian and Jeff for all the hard work that they put into this show. Just wanted to say really proud of being a sponsor of this show. White Glove Performance Group, what do? We have a cloud-based styling technology called Touchpoint. Touchpoint is used in dealerships all across North America. And the main reason for its popularity is because dealerships can now amp up their team to be calling 50 people an hour. They can leave a personalized voicemail, a custom email, as follow-up, all with a click of a mouse. This really speeds up some of the jobs that happen in the dealership, such as cleaning up your recalls, cleaning up lost souls in service, running a private sale, trying to reach out to your database to buy inventory. Obviously, we know that's the way to source it in today's environment. whitegloveperformancegroup.com. My direct is 587-899-6600. Love to have a chat with you about some of the things that we can do. But outside of that, I'm going to turn it back over to the host of the show, and hope everybody enjoys it.
Everyone, I'm John Latka from Automotive Business Solutions, where we help dealerships build more productive and proactive by appointment sales cultures through our Performance Management Partnership Program. So, if you want to increase your sales volume by 2 to 3 sales per month per salesperson, call our toll-free number, 877-708-8484 for a free consultation.
So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Auto Hub Show, and welcome to 2022. Scary. First of all, Jeff, maybe you can talk a little bit about sponsorship since we're starting a new year. We have our platinum sponsor already sold and done. We're looking for gold, silver, and bronze. So go ahead, Jeff.
Actually, we will take bronze. We will take steel. We will. No, just kidding. As we grow here, we're actually getting a lot of traction, a lot of views, a lot of people following up. And as we want to grow, sponsorship will help us get there, and we can help our sponsors. Gail can certainly, from Retail Resilient, can speak to that. We've connected her with a ton of people, and of course, she's done the same thing for us. So, we're planning on doing bigger and better things this year, and sponsorship will certainly create a better way to go for everybody on that one.
And John, maybe you can speak a little bit about sponsorship since you sponsored a show in 2021. And also, just so everyone knows, we will be going on the road in 2022. So we'll be doing live events, maybe not all live, but we'll be doing events at shows in the US and hopefully in Canada as well, and partnering with other podcast hosts as well as we move into the new year. But we are finalizing the roster right now. So we've got shows booked into February. We still haven't finalized beyond that, but we're working on it. And of course, we're also looking for show sponsors like we did last year with Rapid Recon. But go ahead, John.
Where did this come out? How did I become an expert on this?
But John, we think you're an expert on everything.
Well, that's what my wife says.
Really?
Well, yeah. Let's we'll leave the family out of it. Otherwise, I'll get in real trouble. Listen, it's been a pleasure being a sponsor. Certainly, it's just another way of getting your company name out there and what you do, so more people are, of course, aware of what you do, and hopefully brings a little more business.
Fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead with the slide deck first, and then we'll go into the show. It's open format show, so everyone's welcome, of course, and I'm sure we'll have some strong opinions as normal. So obviously we're talking about sponsorship, a few books. I mean, there's so many books on this topic as you go into a new year. And the video today was a little bit about goal setting backed by science. Piece of advice, I think the biggest mistake people make with New Year's resolutions or even goals is they do a list of 12. Pick one, do that one goal or change that one habit, and usually it takes about 90 days, and then pick another one. Atomic Habits I read in 2021, highly recommend it. There's a couple other ones, Malik Chopra, Living in Intent, and Better Than Before. Our standard disclaimer is on our website. Maybe Jeff can go over a few details.
Well, our standard disclaimer, of course, is, and it's much more in depth than that, so please read it, is the views and opinion of that's shared on this show of our guests, of our audience, etc., are those of them and don't necessarily reflect the opinion of Untitled Chapter or the Auto Hub show.
Thank you, Jeff. And this is the beginning of the year, so we're beginning with the first show. And as normal as we ended last year, obviously it's an open format show. So let's get into it. So go ahead, Jeff. I'll leave it up to you. Maybe you can summarize 2021.
Well, 2021 was a special year. And as we look at all the social media posts from everywhere any social media we go to, everybody's going, oh, thank God it's over. I do know dealers that are going, no, it was a great year. And, the money was rolling in, and the beauty is they could spend the money on holidays to empty resorts. But, what will 2022 bring is the big question. And so many people think that 2022 is just going to be like 2021. We have no cars. We have very low variable costs. We don't have to pay for inventory, but we don't have inventory, but somehow we're still doing good numbers. So it's very interesting. Ian, what's your take on that?
Well, I think we first got to summarize what happened in 2021 in terms of what we saw in the show and what we saw in the industry. When I compare that to 2020, 2020, there was a lot of panic because people didn't know how to pivot and they weren't sure what to do. So they were pretty reactionary, including politicians around the world. But in 2021, I think what happened was the new normal kind of set in. Dealers, adapted as best they could to a combination of factors: inventory, limited staff, less walk-in traffic, people wanting to buy online, people not being really willing to wait for cars in some cases, and then an inventory issue to do with the chip shortage, which of course is an ongoing problem. I mean, I know there's been some posts the last couple of days where Tesla was able to rewrite code to still deliver a lot of cars, and I think other manufacturers will do the same. But I think the big thing that came up in the show not only was technology and training based on the surveys I've been doing as we ended the year, but also the fact that you're really looking at a new reality from an automotive retail point of view, and maybe even from a manufacturer's point of view, as they took the learnings of, we don't have to incentivize vehicles, people just buy them at full price. The dealers were like, well, we don't want to inventory stuff again because there's a cost, we want to maximize. So it's going to be interesting to see as the dealers get more inventory. And I've noticed this specifically with Hyundai. I was actually at a Hyundai dealership as we ended the year. I did a quick video review of the Iconic 5, which I'm hoping to put up this week. They seem to be one of the few brands that has inventory on the ground. I was at a General Motors store, a BMW store, and a Hyundai store the same day. And what I noticed was the General Motors dealer had about 6 to 8 new cars in stock and about 15 used cars in stock and a couple acres of vacant property. Whereas the Hyundai store had tons of inventory on the ground, most of it pre-sold, but they were actually getting cars. So I think that's interesting when you look at manufacturers, but more importantly, customers moving from brand to brand. I don't think a lot of dealers realize that customers not only want a car right now, they're willing to move brand and dealership to do it. They don't even care. Like, they're like, okay, I was buying a Honda Pilot, but they didn't have one, so I ended up buying a Volvo. What? Yeah, they had the car, right? So I think that's the new reality, and it's interesting. We're going to have a show on after sales, so it'll be interesting to see if I can get any manufacturers to show up. I've already gotten a few, talked to our PR people. Hard nose. We'll see how that goes. But I think when you look at manufacturers, loyalty, and new entrants, and I use Brian Jessel as an example. They used to sell about 2,500 cars. They're hoping to get 1,400 in 2022, and they probably won't get that many. So essentially, they will lose customers, not because customers don't like the product, but because customers want a car. And I think when you look at the waiting time, what people are willing to wait for a car, I mean, I don't know if you have an opinion there, Jeff, but most people don't want to wait 90 days, 120 days for a car, especially in the US market where they're conditioned to get the car right now. Like they don't want to wait.
Well,
So
it's
I
very
think that's
funny,
the biggest challenge we're going to run into.
and this is probably the biggest thing that we've seen in the years is inventory and how people handled the shortages. And I've seen two types of dealers. Predominantly the dealer with 12 acres of property and 1 car per acre. And the staff are still parked out back. The service customer cars are still parked out back. And they've got 12 cars. One dealer I know locally has moved all his personal private collection into his showroom. So when customers come in, they can look at the 1912, Hispano Souza instead of the 2022, whatever it is. I won't name them. But it's very funny. We talk about handling inventory and people will go elsewhere. Good friend of our show, William Camastro in Gold Coast Cadillac in sunny New Jersey. He developed a very interesting plan, and he's selling Cadillacs like candy bars, doing pre-orders, but then rolling people immediately out of their cars into something used. Maybe it be a Range Rover, maybe it be a Lincoln. He picks up these cars so people can change. Because I think one thing we can all agree with, a customer buys a new car because they want to change. They don't buy out their lease because their accountant says you got to lease another car, or not. They don't return their lease. It's because they want something new. And, gentlemen joining us, if you've got an opinion, please put your hand up. But this is something that we're seeing. Some are just sitting there and living off their pipeline. And I know some Toyota dealers that are, that are doing that. They're sitting there saying, you know what, we're extending our leases. And when somebody's car comes in, they come in. How they're making a lot of money by not turning cars over is mind-boggling, even though the accountants in us will say, well, yeah, because what they're doing is they're lowering their costs, they're doing this, and the manufacturers are giving them enough, which is true. But some of those Toyota buyers are buying Hyundais. They're buying Kias because the quality spread is not what it used to be. There is no quality spread between a Toyota and a Hyundai.
Well, I said to the dealer at the General Motors store in my local market, I said, are you familiar with those carpet stores that are always going out of business? He said, yeah. I said, well, if I drive by your three acre empty lot, I kind of think that's you. He goes, well, we're making lots of money. I said, yeah, but it's like in the real estate market. If you don't have any listings, how are you going to make any money long term? It's not like they're going to fix this problem overnight. And there was a post that I saw the other day, and it's a picture of a car lot with nothing on it, with a big sign, "We'll buy your car." I mean, the reality is dealers need to pivot and reapply their salespeople to really go out and buy cars at scale, and it's really not optional. And the marketing director, who I know very well, was like, well, yeah, but they're too expensive. It's like the customer will come in for a car. If you don't have one, they're not coming in at all. So really, when you look at that, 12 to 18 month projection, and it may be less, it may be more. I mean, depending on what dealer brand you talk to, the OEM representative is saying, hey, yeah, it's going to be fixed in 6 months. I think that number is more about 12 to 18 months, maybe longer than that. So you've really got to have a contingency plan. But more importantly, and this is something that I've been talking to a lot of dealers about as I did last year, was what is your factory order bank process at your dealership? I mean, I remember back in 2006 when I sold Civics, and we didn't have any cars, but we had lots of customers. Now, we lost some customers to Mazda and Toyota, but most people would put an order in if we asked. But now that's true for every model in the inventory. And actually, we were talking to, I think, a Chrysler dealer on a show earlier this year, and he said, yeah, we're buying these entry-level pickups that nobody wanted historically because that's what they could build. So it's not even about the car, really. It's about what you can get, right?
But here's something funny. For those of us that watch the auctions regularly, there are scads of 2021 vehicles on the wholesale auctions with 500, 1,000, 2,000 kilometers. Now, the Chrysler stores that are doing TRX Rams because they register them as a demo, they get their VPA objective, they get that money, and an American picks up that $120,000 truck for $145,000. except what I'm seeing is the 2021 Toyotas are not being bought by Americans. They're being bought by Canadian used car dealers, locally, out of province, out east, etc. And you take a look on LinkedIn, one fellow that I'm connected with from a group in Ontario, Southern Ontario, they run 100 to 200 1-year-old, 0 to 2-year-old cars just south of the line in New York State every week.
Wow.
And that's, yes, we have a problem.
So what's your advice for used car dealers or wholesalers who basically aren't able to buy cars at scale, or it sounds like they are? Because when you talk to new car dealers, they're like, oh, we can't find them. So what's the learnings or I guess the advice for that used car manager who used to have inventory who's now struggling? Like, what's your thought, Jeff? I mean, you deal this every day.
Yeah. Well, my thought for a new car dealer.
Yeah,
I'll use the Toyota example because I've used it and practiced because I've talked about this before, is buy that 2021 Highlander that's sitting on the auction. Pay MSRP for the car. You will have a buyer for that car. You'll have an Uber driver. You'll have somebody that needs that vehicle today.
What about these older cars that people are trading in? I mean, do you think there's a market for that stuff?
Huge. That market has exploded. And as you go down the level, you look at a customer that was going to buy a 1-year-old X rental. They can't buy it anymore because the rental car companies aren't turning their cars over. So they will now buy a 3-year or 4-year-old car. The person that would buy a 3 and 4-year-old car will buy a 5, 6, 7-year-old car, and so on. At the lot that I'm involved in, we're seeing people buying 2009 and 2010 vehicles that they would literally had no intention of buying, but they just can't find anything in their price range. So prices are up and everybody's wanting cars. Well, not everybody, many people are wanting cars.
So what's your opinion on rental car companies then? Do you think that they're gonna still turn those cars in the 3 or 4 year time frame or the 2-year time frame they historically did, or do you think they're gonna hold on to that inventory?
Hey, the ones that are connected with the OEMs we're turning them over every 6 months. Chrysler, they were literally, or Stellantis or whatever we call them anymore. Their auctions. They had closed sales literally once a month of across Canada. 3,000-4,000 cars a month were being sold.
Right.
The States, probably 50 or 100,000 of those things. And that's how they kept the plants running, by building basic Grand Caravans and what was that? The Chevy Traverses and that sort of thing. Well, now they're not building them. And the ones that people want to rent because they want heated seats, some of them, they can't give them heated seats.
Right.
And they're keeping them, or the rental guys have got their remarketing departments are going out and buying them.
And I mean, we were looking at, we did a bunch of surveys, and I'm happy to send it out if anyone's interested at the end of the year. One of the biggest things was dealers, now that they have it all figured out, still wanted to invest in training their current staff or new staff. Maybe we can get some thoughts on John on this, since John helps dealers with the training. I mean, what have you seen some intention as we move into 2022 from dealers saying, now I'm going to invest, I haven't got it all figured out, or has that not yet happened?
Well, in my particular case, it's not happening yet to the volume that I'd like to see. One of our strengths is doing training primarily live in person and doing 1 and 2 day sessions. We started doing them again in October and November, focusing on training for management in terms of HR skills, along with now a new one that we've just developed on leadership that we plan to launch in February, but we might be waiting until March to launch the in-person training. So people do want, the dealers that we've talked to, they want to do live training. They feel that there's more of a benefit in it for the people that attend the sessions. They tend to take more away. And if you have let's say, 7-hour session for one day. It's very difficult to do that online and keep people's attention. So realistically, from our perspective, the live training is coming back a little slower than we'd like to see, but definitely coming back.
And are you seeing a request for different training? Like as we look at, obviously, the fact that walk-in traffic is dramatically down, has been for probably 2 years. Are you seeing requests from dealers to go, okay, we tried this in the early days of the pandemic and we had limited success. We obviously need to adjust our model. I know there's been calls from the OEMs to say, hey, we got to really move into digital retail, but there's still a lot of moving pieces, whether it be Microsoft Teams or different software that we've had on the show in 2021. Do you feel that the dealers have found their solution there? Or are they still trying to figure that out?
Well, I think in many cases, the dealers have been so successful that, some of the people that I talk to that have seen new people come into the industry are saying that they're getting very little, if any, training other than the product knowledge modules that they have to take through the OEMs. Mm-hmm. And basically, they're left to fend for themselves. And people that are coming in, I mean, the majority that are coming into a dealership, as you pointed out earlier, want a vehicle and they want it now. And they're willing to pay, they're willing to buy, and they're willing to, pay full price. So from the perspective of salesmanship, if you will, we're running more clerk-like situations than we are sales-like situations.
Yeah, I mean,
does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned, and we've had Bill on before, and I know, Escalades are selling for over list price in the U.S. market, and I'm sure elsewhere. But the thing that he was concerned with, there was a couple things. Number one, it was compensation, because we have salespeople new to the industry who had a banner year and dealers who had a banner year, but also customer retention. So that customer who pays over MSRP for your vehicle, say in 2021, and then in that lease a couple years later comes back, and then they're underwater. But more importantly, they have to hit them with a really low number based on the market pivoting. What do you think the OEMs are going to do to mitigate that? But more importantly, the dealers who are going to be riding the lightning, I'm sure, as those customers come back and say, okay, I was a General Motors customer, much like I guess it was around 2007 when they had those cheap leases. But now I'm not really that interested because I'm going to get stuck with a big bill. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how the dealers have to mitigate that, but more importantly, how they deal with the customer, in say 2 or 3 years, right? When that customer comes back, wants to change their lease and paid a lot of money for that vehicle just because they had to. I mean, I'm just curious as to how the dealers are going to deal with that, but more importantly, the OEMs, if they're going to support that with some money. I mean, it's going to be interesting for sure.
Well, I got to tell you, my 2 cents on this is like I've seen over too many years, the OEMs are going to throw the dealers out to the wolves, because they're going to say to them, hey man, we mentioned Escalades, you got a $110,000 truck, you're selling for 125, and you're financing this customer, you've ramped it up from 96 to 108 months. In 3 years, they're going to come in, they're going to owe $80,000 on a $60,000 truck. You're on your own, pal. That's I've seen it too many times.
And also the banks, they got to be eating a lot of risk. I mean, I don't know what the captive lender banks are doing here, but that in combination with, I think we're going to see interest rate hikes in 2022 anyway. I mean, it's going to be interesting, certainly, to see how car buyers who bought cars over the last 20 years deal with rates that are not 0 or not 3%, for lack of a better term. I mean, I think that's going to be very interesting. And I think we're already seeing some shift from an ownership perspective from the electric car makers, which I think are also going to be for a world of pain this year as we deal with probably 20 or 30 different entrants into the market, which will push down prices on electric. I mean, right now it seems to be valuations are, crazy town. I mean, there was a post I saw the other day where they were putting the value of all these electric car companies way higher than companies like Ford, for example, which I saw as an opportunity to invest in some of these legacy automakers. But when you have 200 choices for electric cars, and some of them are in stock, I think it's going to be hard to justify that, $120,000 Tesla or the Plaid for 140,000. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but that iconic 5 starting price in Canada is $51,000, which I thought was a little high.
Well, I do have to say, I plan to buy a 2015 Model S Tesla, and I'm going to get a little emblem made up for the back that says Tartan, and I'm going to advertise it, and somebody's going to come running in. I'm going to make a ton of money, and I'll contact our friend Brett Seavey and sell him a warranty.
Did you see the guy that blew it up on YouTube, his Model S?
No.
So he has a Model S, and the battery died. And Tesla tried to hit him with a $22,000 replacement cost. So he dynamited it and then videotaped it and put it on YouTube. He blew it up with explosives. A little bit of an angry customer, I bet.
Here's the funny part. He's smarter than we all give him credit for, because he probably made about $200,000 from YouTube on all the views.
I don't know. I mean, I thought that was interesting just from a point of view of, what is a Tesla worth with no warranty and no battery? Like, what, I know they pay all the money at auction for those things, but what is a 2008 Model S worth, or 2010 Model S worth with no warranty and no battery? Like, what is that worth? I don't know.
Well, a Model S, they didn't make them in 2010.
Okay, so 2012.
Well, but here you got to look at a comparable gas vehicle.
Okay.
How much is a 2013 or 2014 Model S, not Model S, S-Class Mercedes worth?
Right.
That car was 130 grand in 2014. You can buy them right now for about 15 to 18,000 Canadian. You cannot buy a 2014 Tesla Model S for less than 40 grand. Trust me, I'm looking.
So if you could buy a Model S with no battery, what would you pay for that as a used car dealer? I mean, could you feasibly buy that car and get it, repaired? I mean, is that something you'd consider, Jeff? I mean,
well, here's the problem with that car. Until you spend the money for a battery, you don't know what else is wrong with the car.
Oh.
So how could you? You can't say it's worth 40. I'll spend 22 grand on a battery, because you need to get that battery in the car. And Tesla's not like your typical car dealer that'll you give the car, you give them $150, they'll do a diagnostic. I'm sure they don't have a way of hooking up their in-house battery to see how bad the car is. And I also have a fear, if that car's got a toast battery, a lot of systems are gone. What do I know? I'm not a mechanic. And even if I was, I'm not an electric guy. So
yeah, I think that's interesting, because as you look at, say, for example, Nissan Leafs, and there's a lot of those out there, and they've been making them for a long time. You're starting to see some older Leafs out there. But unlike Tesla, they actually sell extended warranties on the battery. So I think that, if you can buy an extended warranty on that battery, much like you do on your iPhone or whatever, I think that there's a real opportunity. But what happens when you have, 50,000, 100,000 Model 3s that their forced return lease come back? Is Tesla prepared to handle that resale of these used cars? I mean, I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges for them and others in that space as we move forward. I mean, I don't know if you saw the latest Car and Driver. This is it here. And they have reviews of all the, I don't know if you can see it. Anyway, it's best car of the year 2022 is the Lucid, but they have reviews of all these cars, including the new Hummer EV, which I think starts around $100,000, something crazy. But the thing that was interesting was a lot of these cars aren't even really in production. Like Lucid just started production at one car of the year. Rivian has started production, I think. But they were really talking about a lot of these vehicles at scale in the magazine. It's worth a read, especially for the Carlos Ghosn article, which I think there'll be a movie about. But that was a pretty interesting article. But what's interesting is you have cars that are new entrants. The companies are very overvalued. You got cars that really, in the showroom in Vancouver for Lucid, they don't even have a real car. They have a prototype hand built from a couple of years ago. But as they see more cars on the market that are electric, what does that do to the gas car value? Like, I mean, I'm currently looking at what that's going to mean for that Porsche fan who wants the car he can no longer buy when they discontinue gas cars. I mean, those gas Porsches used are already worth a lot of money. So I'm curious as to whether there's an opportunity there as we transition to electric, but also what percentage of cars are realistic going to be electric by 2025. I know the politicians are like, oh yeah, they're going to be 100%, but we all know how good they are at managing checkbooks. So I just don't believe that. But
Ian, we don't get political on this show.
yeah, exactly. So what do you think? I mean, do you think 2025 we'll see 50%?
Well, you know, I'm going to answer that question with another question. When you can buy for, I don't know, $75,000, you can buy a pretty high performance electric car.
Yep.
With blinding fast speed. Why would anybody spend $100,000 on a SS Camaro, a Shelby Mustang, or, you know, frankly, you can go buy a used Rimac for $1 million. Why would you spend $1 million on a Lamborghini Senna when the Rimac will blow it into the weeds?
So do you think those classic cars will be collector cars as a transition in terms of converting it to electric, like Jags, they were doing with Jags and stuff? Do you think that's where that's going to go? Or do you think that's just a dead market? You think those historic cars are basically just not going to be worth anything?
Those cars are always going to, that's a terrible term. Cars like that will be worth money for quite a long time, in my opinion. You can't say always, because frankly, you know that right now the Tesla Roadster, the original Roadster, is a collector car. But I do think for the masses, we will be going electric. And I do think, you know, the way it's going, I think 2025 will be 30 to 40% of new car sales will be electrics. And in the cities, especially, because they're phasing out gas stations. I mean, I live in downtown Vancouver, and I know near me, there used to be 25 gas stations within a 5 to 10 minute drive. Now there's 4.
Yeah.
Part of it's because the land when they put the gas station there was $1 million. Now it's 60 million.
Yeah.
And, the petroleum companies have got to start making some money as a contingency plan.
So what's your thought on the hydrogen? And I know I saw Mirage when I was driving around the other day, but do you think that there's going to be really engine choice? Do you think it's going to be, you know, a certain percentage electric, certain percentage hybrid, some ICE cars, legacy, and then hydrogen? You think hydrogen has a shot, or do you think it's really just hoopla?
I'm scared to think that I think the hydrogen could be like the Sony Betamax. And by the way, tune in for the Generation Show coming up in 2 weeks.
So you really think those Mirages are going to be worth nothing? Because I think they're selling
worth nothing right now
these days.
Hey, you can buy a 2016 for like $14,000 for a $50,000 car. And if you live 10 minutes away from a hydrogen station, that's great.
Well, I mean, I noticed the other day that diesel is now more than gasoline, at least in my market, which I thought was crazy town. But also, when you look at, say, for example, hybrid vehicles or even ICE vehicles, I just don't know what's going to happen with these performance car pieces, because you have the old school people who love them, but will that millennial or Generation Z even be interested? I mean, we had that Car Nut show last year. Do you think that millennial and Generation Z even has the same passion for those performance cars, or they'll just have the sound and have an electric? I mean, what do you think? You have kids in those generations.
You know, it's funny. What I'm seeing is there's 2 types of people in that generation right now: drivers and non-drivers. It used to be, you know, a car or a hot rod. Now it's drivers and non-drivers. If you live in a larger city, I know my youngest daughter, she doesn't have a license and has total fear of it, but there's no need for her to get a license, especially these days. You got Uber, you've got, you know, all that stuff. If you live outside of the core of a city, it's a different story. It's still a necessity.
Yeah, I think you're also going to see, as we move towards a self-driving future, and I had a discussion over the holidays with my guy I'm staying with in Victoria's mother, who's in her 70s, and she's convinced it's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. I think it might be farther out, but realistically, I mean, that's going to be a whole other market, because you have people that live in cities who maybe don't drive or take cabs or Uber or pay to get McDonald's delivered for $10. You know, realistically, I think you will see a new area of the market, which is people that maybe buy a percentage uses of a car or have shared car services.
Well, yeah,
sort of the evolution of your rental, you know, daily, hourly rental model. So I think that's kind of interesting. But the other thing that she talked about, and I agree with her, I think you're going to see driverless trucks sooner, just because we have a shortage of truck drivers in North America, and that's not getting better. So it'll be interesting to see, what the legal repercussions of those are when they hit things. But I think you're going to see a transition to a new type of ownership, which is really based around the cell phone model, where people are conditioned to buy a $2,000 cell phone every 2 years and finance it and have a $100 cell phone bill because they spend their life glued to it. And I think they look at cars the same way. I mean, that's one of the explanations I have for Model 3 success, is not the performance of the car, but the fact that it kind of feels like an IKEA showroom with an iPad that you can watch movies in. I mean, that's where I see that generation attraction. It's the BMW for the 2020s, basically.
If I can interject here, Dale, if I can ask you a question, where are you located? I forget, Dale.
You're muted still.
Yeah, you're muted, Dale. That darn little button there.
Oh,
There we go.
yeah.
How
I'm
are
all
you?
good now. I'm in northern BC.
Okay, so obviously the electric car conversation for you is almost a non-starter, isn't it?
It is, but I have an interesting view on it. And, in the name of ecology and saving the planet, I'm not convinced that that's the right model, but I don't think it's about that. I think it's about someone getting rich off of the idea. They're driving that narrative.
100% agree.
Lithium mines, coal-powered plants that, as this grows and China's pumping out more parts, it's just going to cause a lot more. The footprint of this thing is unbelievably horrible, right?
Well, yeah, and I don't know much about it, but I saw something posted online, a picture of a lithium mine, and it's pretty devastating for the land around it. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at cars, electric cars at the turn of the last century, and there was actually an interesting article I posted on battery tech. There's other technology for batteries that not only has got better range, it's less harmful on the planet, but even if you wanted to build all these cars with lithium ion, let's just say you wanted to do that, and you actually believe the politicians when they said 100% electric, I don't think they could even do it. There's not enough resources to make that happen. So in order to transition to that, which I think, we're on the way to doing, I don't know what percentage, but you're going to have to look at other options. But more importantly, you're going to have to see cars that still have some sort of range extender, especially in northern communities, or say in northern Alberta. I mean, it's not like you're going to get a lot of range out of an electric car in Edmonton at -40. I mean, I still remember years ago, I was at a General Motors store in Saskatchewan, and they had a Chevy Volt at the time. They were forced to buy one. And the salesman was incentivized to sell this car. And I was there doing some training, so I drove it. And he's like, "Oh, you want to buy it?" I'm like, "Well, not really." He goes, "Well, there's a big incentive." I said, "Dude, you live in Saskatchewan. Learn how to sell pickup trucks." He says, "What do you mean?" I said, "This is not the car you want to learn how to sell." And then I had a meeting with the owner. He goes, "I will lose money taking this car off my hands. I had the last one for over a year." So that's not electric, but I mean, the challenge with it was, it's a good theory, but not in extreme climates. Or if you're in a situation where you have to do a lot of driving, like in Saskatchewan, I mean, there's no people in most places. So, you're really dealing with a situation where if it's electric, can you realistically do that? But the example I always give people, I live in downtown Vancouver as well. There's a Petrocan that's transitioning to electric charging. So they've got a fast charging station, I guess, for lack of a better term, to charge your fast charge. And then they've got a slow charge. Well, the slow charge one is free. So you get people there that'll basically sit in their parking lot for 6 hours to get a free charge. And the fast charge, they've got a lineup. So let's say it takes 20 minutes to charge that car to 80%. There's people waiting an hour to charge it because there's no spot to do it. So I'm looking at it going, let's say we get to 50%. I mean, where are all these charging ports going to come from? But more importantly, and this was an interesting thing I saw over the holidays in the US, their grid can't handle it. But more importantly, people in those communities where the grid is going over their house, they don't want people expanding the grid to meet demand. And the other thing that was very interesting, and I've been looking at over the holidays, is nuclear power is coming back. So there's going to be some money to be made in uranium mining and nuclear plant construction, because everybody's trying to get rid of coal. And they also realize that solar and wind is not going to make it work. So I think you're going to see a resurrection of nuclear power plants around the world, just because you need power.
But you know what's funny though?
That's where it's going.
I saw an article the other day not in Japan,
Mhm.
somewhere in Europe, they're actually tearing down nuclear power plants.
I mean, that's like what went on in Ontario with those plants that they funded and then defunded and then had to finance the defunding of. I mean, realistically, when you look at China, and I was in China in 2019, the amount of coal that they burn, their only option will be nuclear. I mean, solar and wind is just not going to make it work. And they're investing in infrastructure. But even Japan, that had that horrible destruction of their nuclear power plants that radiated a whole city, they're even building nuclear plants because realistically they need the power. And you know, it's I think the future is choice. And this is an article that was on LinkedIn the other day. They were talking about hydrogen versus electric, which is a common discussion from what I call the anti-ICE crowd on LinkedIn, the EV heads. And I said, listen, the future is choice. It used to be ICE or hybrid, and now it's ICE, hybrid, hydrogen, diesel hybrid, electric. And really, it's going to be a question. I want to buy a Honda Civic. Which engine do you want, and how much are you willing to pay for it? It's not about everyone's going to go electric. I just don't see that in the near future. I mean, it may take 20 years, if that fast.
There has to be an alternative. There has to be an alternative.
Yeah.
I mean, if we take a look, it's not just Saskatchewan. If you look in Oklahoma, you look in Texas, you look, Montana. Oh my gosh, Montana! How can somebody drive an electric when they've literally got to drive 500-600 miles in a day?
Mm-hmm.
And Montana probably has less than 100 charging stations.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Steel, and maybe John can speak to this. Steel just bought an EV-only used car franchise, or one that someone had built. What's the adoption? Where do you see that going, John? You're muted.
Sometimes I'm on and sometimes I'm off. The Steel Auto Group certainly sees a future in it, and they are opening up in Atlantic Canada in different locations, and they seem to be doing relatively well with it, and they want to be ahead of the curve.
But do you see them having challenges buying the inventory, or that's not happening?
Well, they seem to have inventory. I'm sure that like everybody else, there are challenges to buying inventory. But when you've got the kind of resources that they do behind them, it's kind of a well-oiled machine, if you will, from the top down. I think that they'll do very, very well with it.
Yeah, I seem to agree. I mean, when you look at, I think it was New Zealand was one of the first countries to have, New Zealand or Australia had one of the first EV-only used car franchises. And actually, I don't know if you know the gentleman from Up Auto, but he bought one of these Tesla Plaids and then had all kinds of issues with build quality, which was kind of funny. But he's a big Tesla fan. And I said, well, do you own a Tesla franchise? He goes, no. Well, maybe you should look at a used car place to sell these cars, because he's such a passionate supporter of it, but he doesn't own the franchises. So
he can't get a franchise. Don't forget that. Well,
Polestar is getting into the SUV market. They're talking about one, as is Fisker, obviously, with the new Fisker Ocean. But
the trouble is Fisker's such a boutique brand, me and my quotations. It'll be really tough for Fisker to get big. He's got a bad reputation, and it just won't get big.
Tell us what you really think, Jeff.
Well, he does. You know what? I would have loved to have bought one of those Karmas.
Well, did you see him on the Business News Network when he raised the money for the new Ocean?
Well, there's people with money that'll give anybody money.
Well, he said you lost 1.7 billion last time, so why should we give you more money now?
Because people are giving it to him. I don't know who, but people are. But going back to the subject of electric car adoption. What I picture, I'm not going to get political other than to say this. In the US, Democrats in the cities will buy electrics, Republicans won't. But my reality is, I think, is this: the big cities, the Vancouver, the LA, mostly the coastal cities will adopt electric cars. It will be, they have the infrastructure and they have the mindset of it.
Yeah.
You get to the, places such as Dallas, Calgary, Denver, that sort of thing, there'll be an anomaly. And some of these people in those places, they will buy a Cybertruck, they will buy a Rivian, they'll buy a Hummer, but they're always going to have their Ford or Chevy pickup sitting there waiting to drive for most of the time.
Somehow I don't think Edmonton will be a big market for Tesla.
No, no.
At least not in the near future.
No,
But yeah, I agree with you. I think when you look at the woke cities or the environmental cities that are out there, call it what you want. I mean, I think you look at Vancouver, big electric car city, LA, San Francisco, same thing. Probably less so in Texas, but I mean, you're seeing the big cities where, the wealthy people are buying these because they think they're ahead of the curve. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how governments pivot for the tax revenue to support the roads. I think that's going to be very interesting, because if I spent twice as much money as a gas car to buy this electric, I think I'm a genius. And then suddenly I'm not saving any money because I got to pay all this taxes on the electricity. I think that's going to be interesting. But more importantly, I think when you look at ownership, so let's say that ownership is 5 to 7 years in North America for a car, and a hybrid used to cost, when they were new, about $7,000 more than a gas car, at least in Canada. These things are double. So, I mean, how long do you really have to own that car for that to make sense financially? I mean, are we talking 10 years? And are people really going to change the way they own cars?
At the moment, electric cars aren't a financial decision. I want to change the subject
go
very quickly here. Is what do dealers have to do this upcoming year to maintain this? Or are they just going to ride the wave? Are they just going to surf that big wave because there's always big waves? I know in Hawaii, a big surf capital, surfing isn't that big in the summer because the world turns.
Yeah.
What about now? What's going to happen?
Anyone want to comment, or you want me to comment?
Well, yeah, you can go first, Ian.
Okay. I think there's going to be a pivot in the market. I think it's going to take 6 to 12 months, maybe as soon as 6 months. But customers are going to, as cars become available, whether they're a lot of availability or more than today, they're going to start to want a discount again. So I think the dealers who now think they got the world by the tail and they're shooting fish in a barrel, to quote Bill, are going to have to change the way they operate. But more importantly, I think they're going to lose a lot of staff, because those people that have, used to work at the keg, who are now making 150, 200 grand a year selling cars, are going to come back down to earth. And the question is, how does that dealer keep that staff when they really haven't set that up properly? I think compensation and customer experience is also going to bite them in the ass, because we all know the salespeople are like, hey, you don't want it, there's another guy who wants it. So good luck with that. So, I mean, that's a problem, I think. And it's going to bite.
The Honda dealers, hey, look at the Honda and Toyota dealers who went through this in the early part of the 2010s.
Yep.
And they, Toyota especially, I was at the Toyota store at that time. My salespeople were going, oh, what are we going to do? Nobody wants to buy our cars. Oh my God. And coming from the Chrysler world, I was used to being sort of not a beggar, but I was used to being scared. And we did really well, because what happened is you became a salesperson.
Yeah.
And you started to overcome objections. Well, at least I did. I made them do it because I'm not great, but no, just kidding. But this is what's going to, I see this is going to happen. I see all of a sudden you're going to see, these dealers that have been sitting with empty lots are suddenly going to have to figure it out. They don't know, they're going to be panicking. And I know a few that are sitting there going, look at us. Yes, sirree. Here's my big guy of the year. You betcha, give him a wrestling belt.
Yeah. With the trophy
sudden,
and the renovation. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, come on. We talked about the Taj Mahals already.
Well, when I have too much money, what do? I renovate my showroom. Not that it's needed, because I got nothing in it. But
Well, exactly. Let's renovate. Let's do this. Let's do that. But, there is a day of reckoning.
Oh, I agree.
I've always talked about the car god. The car gods are going to make them pay.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
they're going to have all these salespeople that have no sales skills. And the good ones have lost their sales skills because they didn't have to do anything.
Yeah,
It's been eroding.
Sorry?
It has been eroding.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terribly eroding. And, literally, I've walked into showrooms and I think I look like I can afford a car,
maybe.
And they don't, maybe, they don't even talk to you. They're sitting there like this. They're on their phone. They go like this. They go. Because
There's a person there?
What's that?
There's a person in the showroom? Wow.
Oh, there's a person there. He's sitting at his desk. Why? Because he's going to have to tell me he doesn't have a car. Or she.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had a salesman at the store. I was looking for a used car for a friend of mine who's looking for a used convertible right now. And I went in and he's giving me all the reasons why he can't discount the car. And I said, dude, do you have one? Yes. How much is it? This. Okay, can you send me the information? He's like, well, we can't do this and Mark can do it. I said, dude, I didn't ask what you couldn't do, man. Is it available? And do you have it? He was even fighting me on that. He was like, well, we can't do anything. We're going to charge you more. And I'm like, why would you tell me that?
Yeah, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Like, what? Yeah.
It's crazy. Well, Ian and I, you've talked about this, and me sharing my optic view on things is if you're that Toyota dealer, my favorite guys to pick on, and you have bought that used Tacoma, that 1-year-old Tacoma Highlander, heck, even Camrys and Corollas, they're having trouble with some of them. Have them in the showroom. The customer says, oh, you got one for sale. Yes, sir. Sir, this is a used 2021. Or ma'am.
Yeah.
Let me show you the car. If you like it, I can place an order for you. Well, can I buy this? You certainly can. But if you want this, I do have to explain, because of the used car market situation, this has been a lot more money. So let's work on a new one for you.
And let's talk about it.
Let's talk about a new one. Let's get an order if you really like the car. Well, can I buy this car? You can, but please understand it's a lot more money. Let me talk to you. It's almost like the you want something you can't have. But instead, they have no car to show them. And when the customer says, why should I buy this? They go, because it's a Toyota.
Well, I'm at a used car Porsche dealer in Vancouver. And he's got, 10 used Porsches in there. And he's got 3 that are in there, and they're older air-cooled ones. And they got signs on them, not for sale. So I said, okay, so what are you doing, guys? They said, what do you mean? Well, he doesn't want to sell it. I said, yeah, but you're in the best market to sell a used car right now. Probably in the last 20, 30 years. Well, what would it be worth if we sold it? I'm like, I don't know. You're the car seller. You're trying to sell this stuff. And I was at another dealer with the same thing. To your point, he had his own personal car collection in the showroom that he's not selling. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, that'd be like the Bay having some historic garments in the Bay that they're not selling from the turn of the last century. Like, what are you doing, guys? It's a retail location.
It goes back to somebody's ego.
Oh, I know.
Somebody's ego says, like, it's very funny. So we'll talk about V-Auto. Okay, V-Auto teaches you to turn your inventory. So they go, okay, well, V-Auto says, or driving sales this, and I went to this seminar and they said, you can't hold your inventory more than 45 days. You want 20 turns a year. Okay, great. How many people have you lost from your Toyota, your Honda store to a Hyundai? Because they got Santa Fe's.
Yeah.
How many people have you lost your Highlander or your RAV4 to a Santa Fe? I know a number of people that have bought Tucson's and Santa Fe's in a hybrid because they couldn't get a RAV4 hybrid, and they told them you got a 2-year wait. They told them right up front.
2 years.
2 years. I know one guy that actually bought a Tucson gas because he's got a place. He's in Vancouver. He's got a place in Sun Valley, Idaho. When he discovered that the plug-in hybrid drives the electric drives the rear wheels, the gas drives the front wheels. And when you're going through deep snow, guess what happens?
It's a problem.
Somebody shuts down. The gas keeps going. but your electric doesn't. And some models, I don't know which one, you can't cancel the traction control.
Yeah.
So
But
he bought
again,
a gas.
it's teaching your staff to say, listen, you got to eat by selling cars, right? Okay, great. You can take a certain amount of factory orders. I know a Toyota store that's not even taking factory orders anymore because they don't even know if they're going to get any more cars. So you're sitting here doing nothing. You can wait for the factory orders and hope they don't cancel, or you can sell what we have right now. Why are you not doing that? Like, I mean, I actually went out to breakfast with a guy yesterday I used to work with years ago. He was a used car guy that refused to sell new cars, even though his compensation was dependent on selling a couple of new cars. But you know, the reality was it's you've got to learn these skills, and I think it's a great opportunity for trainers and sales managers and dealers and OEMs to say, listen, you know, pump up your certified used car program. Take people out of leases like Bill's doing and put them in other cars. Put them in something, because if you don't, they're going to find a solution. If they're in the market to buy a vehicle, whether it be new or used, they want a vehicle. You're probably not going to convince them not to buy one or wait 2 years. That's just not smart. And you got to think about a logic.
That is why, to our audience, you contact Automotive Business Solutions in Halifax, Nova Scotia, who does things virtually as well as in person.
Yeah.
And if you tell them that you saw this on the Auto Hub show, you will get a T-shirt and an Auto Hub card.
Well, we're almost out of time. So, is there any final parting thoughts from any of our guests?
Well, let's just hope that 2022 is the beginning of the end for the COVID era.
I agree. I don't think the politicians can police it anymore anyway, because they can't even figure out checks.
I think the Decepticon virus is taken care of.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be Optimus Prime next. That's what I think. Transformers are coming. Well, did you see that stuff about the moon? The Japanese are sending a thing to the moon that transforms into something else when it lands in 2022.
I just saw a post of a one of those water bottles that looks inside and looks like.
Well, there's going to be like 20 rovers on the moon in theory in 2022, from various countries.
Yeah. Next comes military.
Yeah.
Dale?
Does anybody have insight on the semiconductors?
Well, there's a
Are we
great
3 years
video.
away? Or are we 1 year away?
Well, Marco Menudo, who's been on the show, he's a salesman in Toronto. He did a really interesting video on this topic. If you're interested, I can connect you to him. The biggest challenge is this, and he summed it up. What percentage of the world chips are purchased by automotive manufacturers, do you think?
Probably.
I would say 10, 15.
10%. What percentage of the chips are purchased by Apple, for example?
Probably 50%.
30%.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so part of the issue is car companies cut their orders when the pandemic first hit because they didn't know what was going to happen. So they cut their orders. And then the chip people said, okay, we'll sell them to the other electronics companies that put chips in everything. So I think realistically, because you've had new factories come online, and his video goes into a lot of detail on how much the capital investment is, how long it takes, and all this other stuff, you're probably looking at 12 to 18 months. Now, the OEMs, and not to beat them up by any stretch, they're going to lie to you. They're going to say it's 6 months. They're going to say it's 3 months. You're probably looking to get back to normalcy, or the new normal, probably 12 to 18 months, depending on the manufacturer. Now, for some reason, the domestic manufacturers have been hit harder than the import manufacturers. And I would say the Korean manufacturers, for some reason, either have their own chip manufacturing or have access. And I would also say that's somewhat true with Toyota. They've been less hard hit, but even Toyota has adjusted their global production targets. And I think all the manufacturers will take a page from Tesla as they've adapted software, because if you look at all the hiring going on with OEMs right now, most of it is people who write code. So you're going to see more and more OEMs move towards a less chip-centric manufacturing process, because a lot of them have cars on the ground that are 90% built. They just need chips. Yep. So those cars, once the chips arrive, and I think that's 12 to 18 months, maybe as soon as 6, depending on the chips, you're going to see a whole bunch of cars arrive. But what manufacturers need to do, and what dealers need to do, is really think about what you're ordering and say, listen, if I'm ordering 10 Cadillacs or 10 pickup trucks or 10 whatever, what can I actually get? not what I'd like to get, what is possible to get. And I would work with your rep and say, hey, like, what's available, not what your competition is ordering, because it's going to be about what cars you got that you can sell. So if you can get some, we had a gentleman on the show in Alberta, he bought a bunch of basic pickup trucks that he didn't used to be able to sell, but because there's none around, he's been able to get the trucks, but more importantly, sell them, because the customer just wants a truck. They're less likely to care about these features because they want something. So I think that's another strategy that a lot of dealers need to look at in 2022 is, yeah, okay, the rep's lying to me. He's saying it's going to be solved in 6 months. What am I going to do for the next 6 months or the next 8 months? And what can I get right now? Because they're only going to be allocated a certain amount of vehicles, but don't order that high-line vehicle that they don't have the chips to make.
Well,
I mean, they're not going to tell you
them,
that, but they don't.
And there's a bunch of smarty pants there that have got in like 300 orders for these the fancy ones, because they say, well, when they finally build them, they're going to give them all to me.
They're not going to.
No,
they're not. I mean,
no.
I was at Brian Jessel and they tried to order these electric cars. They got 300 orders. And I said, well, how many do you think you're going to get? He goes, I don't know. I said, exactly. As few as they can, as many as they can give you, but it won't be 300. So what you need to do is have a contingency plan and say, okay, what are we going to put these people into after we got a factory order to put them into a car right now? So I think that's the other learning is, if I've got an order of 200 cars, for example, I need to be working that order list with cars that are similar that I can deliver right now. Like, what do I got that I can put them into, new or used? The salespeople got to start to think strategically, as do managers and owners, about how can I make money today and still have a happy customer? That customer might be flexible. Like when I sold Civics, we'd sold, I mean, obviously a lot of mid to high end trim, but if we got a base model and we said, hey man, you can wait 3 months or you can take this right now. Do you want to at least come look at it? I mean, you got nothing to lose.
The old days
car you got.
The old days of I want a silver one, don't have silver.
Yeah.
Can I get a black? Don't have black. Can I get a gray? Don't have gray. What color you got? Green with tan interior. I don't want it. No problem. Let's wait 4 months. Okay, I'll take the green with tan interior.
I mean, watch that Chevy Chase one where they crush his car and then they convince him to buy the car that he doesn't want, that he didn't order. I mean, not saying you should do that as the de facto, but realistically, you've got to think intelligently and think strategically. And that's also true with factory orders. You need to stack up orders because guaranteed the manufacturer is going to give cars to the people with more orders, 100%. And if you don't know how to work that, then I don't think you should be in the car business. But, you got to work that angle. Right. And you got to work your rep. I mean, but chips, I don't know, man. I'd say 12 to 18 months. That'd be my educated guess, if that soon.
I think Tesla's going to start selling chips to others.
Scale it up? I don't know. Right?
That's right. Well, we got late for time. Thank you very much, everybody. And thanks for joining us. And Happy New Year. And thanks for starting your new year with Ian and Jeff at the Auto Hub Show.
And if you want that video from Marco, let me know. Just send me a message, or you can email ianandjeff@autohubshow.com. He did a really good summary for car guys. So if you have a limited attention span, he did a video really simple.
He sells cars. If you have a limited attention span, this is the car business.
Yeah. If you have a limited attention span and you don't want to do all the research, it'll just give you the high level real quick. Like 2-3 minutes, you'll know everything you need to know.
All the best, everybody. See you next week.
All the best.
Bye.
Bye.
Go on.